Today I have the pleasure of speaking to Rob Helms. Rob has joined us as an administrator at Life Church. Rob, thank you for joining us today. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Rob and I'm doing some admin work at the Life Centre. Been working here about a few weeks now. Me and my wife recently came back to Life Church a few months ago. For me, it's my first time being part of the church, whereas Heather, she used to be a part of Life Church for quite a few years.
Heather Cavell in Old Money, isn't she?
That's right, yeah.
How did you meet Heather?
Well, we actually met on Christian Connection, I think it's called. I think for Heather, she'd been on there a while, not really had much luck. And for me, she was actually the first person I spoke to.
That is so jammy. Did you find it sort of difficult trying to build a rapport over the internet?
To be honest, I think online, like for me personally, it was just, I guess, something a bit safer to actually get to know someone a bit better before we actually met in person, because I can be a bit shy when I meet in person sometimes. I was quite embarrassingly lonely before I met Heather, so I did actually pray quite a lot to meet someone, and not long after I actually met Heather. And it's a funny story, like I remember our first date, we had an Italian meal, and within about half an hour, I just knew that I was going to marry her. Like, everyone thought I was mental. Like, I told my pastor, Ben, at the time, I've just met my wife. And he was like, oh, well, maybe calm down a bit. Don't tell her that.
Yeah, definitely don't tell her that. You know, that's a hard no on that front. You know, we'll talk about, like, they'll run a mile.
That's right.
But, I mean, you're certainly efficient. I'll give you that, you know.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit how you met Jesus?
Yeah, in my life, I've always been a bit of a spiritual seeker. Been involved in a lot of different religions in the past. When I was younger, when I was 21, I was actually ordained as a Buddhist monk in a bit of a Buddhist cult. It was actually.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So
always fun being part of a cult. Keeps
yeah. I was involved in that for quite a few years. I was really wanting just to connect with like a higher power. I tried really hard to kind of make that connection, but there was just something not right. Mm-hmm. It took me a long time, but eventually I found myself out of the religion. And one thing I did notice was I thought it was a loving environment, but when I tried to leave, that's when it was kind of really, I saw it for what it was. Yeah. And I spent a lot of time after that going through just a long period of depression. One day I was just really depressed and I just went for a walk. I used to live in Preston. And I just felt God was there before me. And there was like a series of events that happened that led me to meeting Jesus. And what I found was he actually loved me in a way that none of those other spiritual beings ever could. Yeah. And it was just real. That was the difference. I didn't realize how, before I was just playing being spiritual. I thought I was a very spiritual person, meditating every day for hours. I took vows, all this kind of stuff. But I realized I was just playing spirituality. But when I met Jesus, it was real. And he really changed my life. Yeah. And just coming into his presence, he took me in when I felt like I was utterly worthless and had nothing going for me. And just to feel God's love around me, I just ran to it. It just completely changed my life.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. It feels authentic in a way that other stuff didn't. It
was just real. Like, I always wanted to believe in Jesus and God, but he just made it real, you know. That was the difference.
That is fantastic to hear. That's awesome. So you've got you're like me. You've got a few different jobs, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right.
So do you want to tell us how that real, authentic relationship with Jesus affects you in those frontline sort of jobs that you're in?
For me, it's been really hard, just to change how I view work. Yeah. And for me, like, it's really about having that relationship with Jesus and not making him smaller than he is. I think in the past I've made him a bit too small, that he's not actually in control of my life. Mm-hmm. And I think with work, it's more like I'm trying to realize that he's actually caring for me in those situations. He's actually going before me in my work. And he's my provider. I think that's it. That kind of frees a lot of mental space, I think, if you know you're putting it in God's hands, and it really is in his hands, you know. And I think it's trying to get that into my heart, really, so I'm not just surviving, but then I can actually be thriving. I think
Definitely.
that's the key, I think.
One of the most fascinating aspects about your relationship with God is the way it manifests in your writing. You're a poet. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your process is?
When I was younger, I used to write a lot, and I was involved in like poetry workshops. I won a poetry competition at one point, so I was getting really serious about it. Over time, I'd become a bit too much of a perfectionist when it comes to my poetry. Like, I just really beat myself up. That's not good enough. And so I had to give it up for years, and it wasn't until I met Jesus that he encouraged me to write again. And this time I just had to let all of that go, just for it to be okay for me to be bad, and to do that for God. And I found since I've done that, and I've just made it more of a prayerful activity, and I've just tried not to listen to that voice that's just very critical, and just to do it for God. And what I found is, as I've done that, people have begun to appreciate my writing more and more.
Yeah, that needs to be perfect. It could be a real killer, can't it?
Yeah, I said you just got to start, haven't you?
Listen, Robert, thank you so much for talking to us today. That was it's fascinating, and I'm really glad to get the opportunity to get to know you a bit better.
Thank you very much.